The diplomatic transport hummed through the void, carrying its precious cargo of 17 species representatives towards Station Harmony. Commander Vrell of the Cantharian delegation sat rigid in his seat, triple-checking the emergency protocols on his datapad. Again. For the 4th time that hour. "You seem nervous," observed Ambassador Thien, her blue-tinted skin shimmering under the cabin lights. The Velthori woman had served in diplomatic corps for 30 cycles, and her calm demeanor usually steadied everyone around her. "I am not nervous," Vrell lied, his mandibles clicking in what anyone who knew Cantharians would recognize as acute anxiety. "I am simply prepared." "For what, exactly?" Thien leaned back, amused. "We are traveling with humans. They are Category 5 Deathworlders, yes, but the war ended decades ago. They are our allies now." Vrell's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a gesture that roughly translated to profound skepticism mixed with existential dread. "That is precisely what concerns me. Do you know what I read last night? A human once survived being struck by lightning. 7 times. 7. And he lived to retirement." "Fascinating," Thien said, though her tone suggested she found it anything but. "Another one fell from the sky when his flying machine exploded. He crashed through trees and landed in snow. No protective equipment. He walked away with minor injuries." Vrell's voice climbed higher with each word. "These creatures are insane." "They are resourceful," Thien corrected, but Vrell was already spiraling. "They invented something called free climbing where they scale vertical rock faces using only their appendages. For entertainment." "Who does that?" Before Thien could answer, the cabin door slid open with a soft hiss. Captain Julia Reeves stepped through, followed by a smaller human that barely reached her hip. The child, perhaps 7 or 8 solar cycles old if Vrell's hasty research was accurate, clutched a worn stuffed animal that resembled some kind of earth predator. "Good morning, everyone," Julia said cheerfully, her smile displaying those distinctly omnivorous teeth that still made half the galaxy uncomfortable. "Sorry we're late. Someone insisted on bringing Mr. Buttons even though I said we didn't have room." The child, a girl with dark curly hair pulled into 2 puffs on either side of her head, hugged her stuffed toy tighter. "Mr. Buttons is crew," she announced with the absolute certainty only human children seemed capable of projecting. "Of course he is," Julia sighed, ruffling the girl's hair. "Everyone, this is my daughter, Mika." "Mika, remember what we practiced about meeting new species? No screaming, no running, no asking why they look weird," Mika recited dutifully, then waved at the assembled aliens. "Hi. I'm 6 3/4. Vrell's mandibles went completely still, which in Cantharian body language meant he had just entered maximum alert status. A juvenile human. On a diplomatic transport. With the physical capability to potentially tear through bulkheads if the mood struck them. Wonderful. Simply wonderful. "She is small," Vrell managed. "She's 6, Julia said, as if that explained everything. Which, to humans, it probably did. The transport lurched suddenly, and warning lights flickered across the control panels. The pilot's voice crackled through the intercom, speaking in rapid galactic standard that even the translation software struggled to keep up with. "Emergency descent required. Unidentified vessel approaching. Possible hostile intent. Brace for evasive maneuvers." The cabin erupted in controlled chaos. Diplomats scrambled for crash seats. Vrell activated his personal shield generator, which he absolutely did not carry everywhere due to paranoia. "Thank you very much," Julia moved with practiced efficiency, strapping Mika into a reinforced seat and checking the harness twice. "Hold tight, sweet pea. It's just some turbulence." Turbulence turned out to be a rather generous description for what followed. The transport shook like a leaf in a hurricane, diving toward the nearest planet, a largely unexplored world designated as Refuge 7 in the charts. The unknown vessel pursued, firing warning shots that lit up the view screen in brilliant flashes of superheated plasma. "They are hurting us," someone shouted, probably the Morphelian engineer whose name Vrell had forgotten to memorize. The transport crashed through Refuge 7's atmosphere, heat shields screaming in protest. Trees, so many trees, filled the view screen. The pilot did something incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, probably both, and managed to set them down in a clearing with only moderate structural damage, which is to say, everyone survived, but the transport would not be flying anywhere anytime soon. Vrell unbuckled on shaking legs, his emergency kit already in hand. His species had evolved on a world where danger lurked behind every boulder, and old instincts died hard. "Status report. Hull breach in Cargo Bay 3, the pilot called out, emerging from the cockpit with a bleeding gash across his forehead. He was Korvaxi, built like a bipedal tank, and even he looked shaken. "Engines are slag. Communications array is damaged. We are stranded." Perfect, Thien muttered, helping a limping delegate from the Hive Collective toward the medical station. Any idea who attacked us? Raiders, probably, Julia said, already moving through the cabin with a scanner in hand, checking for injuries. Refuge 7 is technically unregulated space. Perfect hunting ground for pirates looking to ransom diplomats. Mika had somehow unbuckled herself and was now standing at the main viewport, pressing her small hands against the reinforced glass. Wow, she breathed. Look at all the trees. Are there animals here? Can we see them? I bet there are animals. Mika, get away from the window, Julia ordered, her tone shifting into something Vrell recognized as maternal authority, a universal constant across species. But Mom. Now. The child retreated, pouting, but before Julia could relax, a new sound cut through the damaged hull. Low. Resonant. Primal. It started as a rumble, built into a crescendo, and ended in a series of barks and howls that made every non-human in the cabin freeze in absolute terror. Vrell knew that sound. Every Cantharian knew that sound, coded into their genetic memory from 1,000 generations of prey animals learning to fear apex predators. It was the call of something large, carnivorous, and hunting. Defensive positions. Vrell squeaked, which was embarrassing, but survival instinct trumped dignity. We are under attack. Predator pack, Category 8 at minimum. Ambassador Thien had gone pale, her skin losing its usual vibrant blue. The Morphelian engineer was making a high-pitched keening noise. Even the massive Korvaxi pilot had grabbed an emergency plasma cutter and was holding it like a weapon. The howling grew closer. Louder. More howls joined the first, creating a chorus of hunting calls that promised teeth and claws and blood. Mika walked back to the viewport, tilting her head as she listened. Then, inexplicably, impossibly, she started bouncing on her toes with excitement. Puppies, she squealed with pure delight. Mom, there are puppies outside. Can we see them? Please, please, please? Every alien in the cabin turned to stare at the human child with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. Vrell's mandibles started clicking again, faster than before, nearly a blur. Those, he said slowly, carefully, as if speaking to someone who had suffered recent head trauma, are not puppies. Those are apex predators. Pack hunters. Probable bite force of 600 to 800 pounds per square inch based on vocalization patterns. We are prey. Mika looked at him with the patient expression children reserve for adults who clearly do not understand the obvious. They sound like huskies. Or maybe wolves. Do you have wolves here? That would be so cool. Julia had moved to the weapon locker, pulling out a standard-issue plasma rifle with practiced ease. Mika, honey, those might not be friendly. But they are puppies. Mika insisted. I can tell. Another howl, this one close enough that Vrell could hear the underlying growl beneath the call. Through the damaged hull, shadows moved between the trees. Large shadows. Multiple large shadows. His research last night had included a section on Earth's predators, and he distinctly remembered something about wolves hunting in coordinated packs of 6 to 15 individuals, did not want to meet even one. First creature emerged from the tree line, and Vrell's worst fears were confirmed. It stood nearly a meter tall at the shoulder, covered in thick gray and white fur, with eyes that gleamed with predatory intelligence. Its jaws could easily close around his entire torso. Behind it, more of the pack appeared, at least 8 that he could count. Mika pressed against the viewport, her face lit up with joy that seemed completely divorced from reality. Look how fluffy they are. Julia, Thien said carefully, perhaps you should explain to your offspring that those are dangerous carnivores. Oh, I know, Julia replied, but she had lowered her rifle slightly, her head tilted in observation. But Mika might have a point. Look at their body language. Vrell looked. Against every survival instinct screaming at him to hide under a chair, he looked. The lead wolf, if that was what they were, had its ears forward, not pinned back. Its tail was up and moving, not straight out for an attack run. The others were playing? 2 of them were actually tumbling over each other near the tree line. This does not make sense, Vrell whispered. Predators should attack. We are injured. Vulnerable. Easy prey. Julia smiled, and there was something knowing in that expression, something that hinted at understanding beyond what most species grasped. Not everything that can hurt you wants to hurt you, Commander. Sometimes a predator recognizes other predators and decides to say hello instead of starting a fight. That is insane human logic. Maybe, Julia agreed. But watch. She hit the control to open the external airlock, and Vrell nearly fainted. The airlock door hissed open, and every non-human in the cabin collectively decided that humans were absolutely, certifiably, without question insane. Vrell clutched his emergency kit so hard his claws punctured the synthetic material. Julia, no. Ambassador Thien shouted, but the human woman was already stepping through the opening, her rifle slung across her back in what had to be a gesture of either supreme confidence or suicidal stupidity. Possibly both. Mika, naturally, tried to follow. Julia caught her by the collar of her jacket without even looking. You stay inside until I say otherwise. But Mom. Mika Grace Reeves, do not test me right now. The full name. Even Vrell, who had met exactly one human family before this disaster, knew what that meant. Mika deflated but stayed put, pressing her nose against the viewport hard enough to leave a smudge. Julia stepped onto the ramp, hands visible and empty at her sides. The lead wolf, easily 200 pounds of muscle and teeth, approached slowly. Its packmates fanned out, not surrounding, just watching. Curious, the Morphelian engineer whimpered. She is going to die. We are going to watch a human die, and then we will die, and I never even filed my tax returns for this cycle. Quiet, Thien hissed, though her voice shook. Let her work. Work was apparently standing very still while an apex predator circled her, nose working, processing her scent. Julia kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed but not submissive. The wolf completed its circle, then sat down in front of her and tilted its head. It looked, Vrell thought with dawning horror, exactly like the dogs he had seen in human cultural databases. The ones humans kept in their homes. On purpose. As companions. Hey there, gorgeous, Julia said softly, her voice carrying through the open airlock. You're far from any known wolf populations, aren't you? How did your pack get here? The wolf's tail swept the ground. Once. Twice. She is talking to it, Vrell whispered. As if it can understand complex language. As if it is a sentient being. Maybe it can, Thien murmured, but she sounded uncertain. Julia slowly, carefully, extended her hand palm down. The wolf leaned forward, sniffed, then licked her fingers. Behind Vrell, someone made a sound like air escaping from a punctured tire. Good boy, Julia crooned, and Vrell realized with absolute certainty that humanity's position as a dominant spacefaring species had nothing to do with technology or intelligence and everything to do with their complete inability to recognize appropriate levels of danger. Or girl. Let me see. Girl. Good girl. Mika could not contain herself any longer. Mom. Can I pet her? Please? I will be so careful. I will use my gentle hands. Not yet, baby. Let me make sure she's friendly first. She is friendly. Look at her tail. The wolf, as if understanding the conversation, looked directly at Mika through the viewport. Its tail wagged harder, and it made a sound that was halfway between a whine and a bark. The universal language, apparently, of there is a small human and I would like to investigate it. Julia laughed, actually laughed, while standing within biting distance of a predator that could tear her throat out. Okay, I think we're good. But slow, understand? Nice and slow. Mika moved faster than Vrell had ever seen a human child move, which was saying something. She was down the ramp before Julia could reconsider, dropping to her knees in front of the massive wolf with zero hesitation. Zero fear. Zero survival instinct whatsoever. The wolf, rather than doing any of the horrible things Vrell had imagined in the last 30 seconds, leaned forward and licked Mika's entire face in one long swipe. The child dissolved into giggles, wrapping her small arms around the predator's neck. She is so soft. Mom, she is so soft. Can we keep her? Please? I will feed her and walk her and teach her tricks. We are not keeping a wolf, Mika. But why not? Because we live on a space station, for starters. We could get a bigger apartment. Julia sighed the sigh of parents everywhere trying to explain why their children cannot have dangerous pets. Wolves need to be with their packs, honey. It would not be fair to take her away from her family. As if on cue, the rest of the pack emerged fully from the tree line. 8 more wolves, ranging from adolescents to another massive adult. They approached the ramp cautiously, interested in the strange metal bird that had fallen from the sky and the even stranger creatures inside the cabin. Panic was reaching new heights. The Korvaxi pilot had his plasma cutter raised. 3 delegates were trying to seal themselves into the cargo bay. Vrell was calculating whether his personal shield generator could withstand a sustained wolf attack, which it absolutely could not, but denial was a powerful coping mechanism. Everyone stay calm, Thien commanded, though her voice cracked on the last word. The humans have this under control. The humans have lost their minds. Vrell countered. Look. The small one is now petting a second predator. A second one. Indeed, Mika had somehow attracted a younger wolf, maybe 2 years old, that was currently trying to climb into her lap despite weighing at least 100 pounds. The girl was laughing so hard she could barely breathe, and Julia was taking pictures on her handheld device because apparently documenting your child's near-death experience was just standard human parenting. Rex would love you, Mika told the young wolf seriously. He is my dog back home. He is a German Shepherd, which is basically a wolf but smaller, and he knows how to sit and shake hands. Can you shake hands? She held out her tiny hand. The wolf, incredibly, lifted its paw and placed it in her palm. Mika squealed with delight. Vrell sat down hard on the nearest chair. I need medical attention. I am having a cardiac event. You have 3 hearts, Thien pointed out. You will survive. Not if I watch this much longer. Julia had moved to examine the alpha female more closely, running her hands through the thick fur, checking for injuries or signs of domestication. No collar. No tags. No signs of human intervention. But you're not wild, are you? Too comfortable with people. The wolf made a low rumbling sound that was not quite a growl, more like agreement. I think, Julia said slowly, working through a theory, that your descendants. When the first colony ships came through this sector 50 years ago, some of them crashed. A few were carrying Earth animals for genetic diversity programs. If a wolf breeding pair survived. She trailed off, the implications clear, Mika gasped. They have been living here all by themselves for 50 years? That is so sad. They probably miss Earth. Do you miss Earth? She asked the wolf currently drooling on her shoulder. Do you want to hear about Earth? It has grass and parks and squirrels, which are these little fuzzy things that run up trees, and Rex always wants to chase them, but I tell him no, bad dog, be nice to the squirrels. The young wolf appeared fascinated by this information, or possibly just fascinated by the small human who radiated endless enthusiasm and smelled like interesting things. Movement at the tree line caught Julia's attention. She stiffened, hand moving toward her rifle, but the alpha female stepped between her and the threat, hackles rising. A low warning growl rumbled from deep in the wolf's chest. 5 figures emerged from the forest, bipedal, armed, definitely not friendly. The raiders who had shot them down. They wore mismatched armor and carried weapons that had seen better days, but numbers and guns were still numbers and guns. Well, the leader called out in heavily accented galactic standard. What do we have here? Diplomats, is it? Worth a nice ransom. And humans too. He laughed, a sound like metal scraping metal. Even better. Deathworlders fetch premium prices on the black market. Vrell's 3 hearts, which had just begun to calm down, kicked into overdrive again. Raiders. Slavers. With weapons. This day could not possibly get worse. Julia moved slowly, deliberately, placing herself between Mika and the raiders. You really do not want to do this. Oh, I think we do. The leader raised his weapon. Drop your rifle, human. Nice and slow. Then everyone comes out of the ship. We'll sort out who's worth keeping and who's spare parts. The wolves had gone very, very still. 9 predators, listening, watching, waiting. The alpha female glanced at Julia, and something passed between human and wolf. Understanding. Recognition. Pack. Julia smiled, and every alien who knew humans recognized that particular expression. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had just decided that violence was, in fact, the answer. Mika, Julia said calmly, remember that thing we practiced? The one Daddy taught you for emergencies? Drop and cover? Mika asked. Exactly that. Right now. The girl flattened herself on the ramp, arms over her head, just as Julia whistled. Sharp. Piercing. A command, the alpha female exploded into motion. 9 wolves, 200 pounds each of muscle and teeth and predatory instinct, launched themselves at the raiders. It was not a fight. It was not even a contest. It was a demonstration of why apex predators earned that title. The raiders had perhaps 3 seconds to register their mistake before they were on the ground, wolves standing over them, jaws inches from vulnerable throats. Not biting. Just holding. Waiting for the command. Julia walked down the ramp, rifle in hand but not aimed, while Mika scrambled to her feet and cheered. Good doggies. Such good doggies. You get all the treats. They are not dogs, Vrell whispered from inside the cabin, but the protest was weak. They are supposed to be wild animals. Wolves are pack hunters, Thien said, her analytical mind kicking into gear despite the insanity. Julia established herself as pack leader, or at least pack ally. They defended pack. It is actually quite logical. Nothing about this is logical. Julia stood over the raider leader, who had gone very pale despite his species' natural green complexion. Here is what is going to happen, she said pleasantly. You are going to repair our communications array. You are going to call off any backup you might have. Then you are going to leave this planet and never, ever come back. Because if you do, my friends here will be waiting. And next time, I will not tell them to be gentle. Understand? The raider nodded frantically. All 5 raiders nodded frantically. Good. Get to work. The wolves stepped back, allowing the raiders to scramble to their feet and rush toward the damaged transport, suddenly very motivated to be helpful. Julia watched them go, then turned to the alpha female and scratched behind her ears. Thank you, she said simply. The wolf leaned into the touch, tail wagging. Mika had already claimed 3 more wolves as her new best friends and was explaining to them the complex social dynamics of elementary school recess. And then Tommy said I could not play astronauts because I am a girl, but I told him that is stupid because girls can be astronauts. My mom is basically an astronaut. And then he said okay fine you can be an astronaut too, and we built a rocket ship out of boxes. Inside the cabin, Vrell finally found his voice. We are going to die. Maybe not today, but eventually, humans are going to get us all killed. Probably, Dean agreed. But we will have interesting stories to tell first. The communications array took 2 hours to repair. 2 hours during which Mika taught 4 wolves how to sit, stay, and give high fives. 2 hours during which Julia and the alpha female appeared to have entire conversations consisting entirely of body language and the occasional grunt. 2 hours during which Vrell seriously reconsidered every life choice that had led him to this moment. When rescue ships finally arrived, called by the now functioning communications system, they found a scene that would become legendary in diplomatic circles. A crashed transport. 5 raiders working under heavy guard. 17 diplomats in various states of shock. And 1 human child napping peacefully in a pile of wolves like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. This will require so much paperwork, the rescue captain muttered. Worth it, Mika mumbled sleepily, hugging the young wolf. Best field trip ever. Later, much later, after statements were given and medical checks completed and the raiders were hauled away to face justice, Vrell found himself standing with Ambassador Thien on the observation deck of the rescue ship. Refuge 7 was shrinking behind them, the wolf pack already vanished back into the forest. I have decided something, Vrell announced. What is that? Humans are absolutely insane, and I am requesting a transfer to any diplomatic mission that does not involve Deathworlders. Thien smiled. You will miss all the excitement. That is exactly the point. But even as he said it, Vrell was reviewing the mission files for his next assignment, and somehow, inexplicably, finding himself disappointed that there were no humans listed on the crew manifest. Perhaps, just perhaps, a little insanity made life more interesting. On Refuge 7, a pack of wolves settled down for the night, their territory safe, their bellies full from the ration packs the grateful diplomats had left behind. The alpha female raised her head to the stars and howled, a sound of contentment and farewell, and in her cabin on the rescue ship, Mika Reeves hugged Mr. Buttons tight and dreamed of puppies.